Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we'll start in just a few minutes. Or I should say just a minute. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Hope everybody's doing well with their families, inshallah, as we continue to kind of move forward with this reality that we live in for now. Adversity continues to be the theme that we all are sharing in. Some form, some shape of adversity is what we all are trying to live through at this moment in time. And, subhanAllah, when you think about it, it's literally history being made in front of us. And there's going to be a period in time where people look back at this and say, 2020 was the year that the coronavirus hit, that, X, Y, and Z thing occurred. So it's certainly something for all of us to really reflect on and consider as we go through these days. But I'm going to continue on with the topic that we had previously, the theme of adversity. And I want to reflect on these last two kind of elements of the story of Musa alayhi salam. And this next one is in regards to when Musa alayhi salam decided, or was told rather, to go to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at Mount Sinai, at Turi Sinin. And Musa alayhi salam was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are to come for 30 days. This is what the people know, 30 nights. The people knew that he was supposed to go and come for 30 nights, go to Mount Sinai for 30 nights, and then he would return. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that فَتَمَّ مِيقَاتُ رَبِّهِ أَرْبَعِينَ لَيْلَةً, that we completed his stay to be 40 nights instead. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to stay 40 nights rather than the 30 that had originally been prescribed for him. And so in this time, Musa alayhi salam, before he had left his brother Harun alayhi salam in charge of Banu Israel. He had put him in charge and said, take care of my people. Literally his words were, وَقَالَ مُوسَى لِأَخِيهِ هَارُونَ اخْلُفْنِي فِي قَوْمِي وَأَصْلِحْ وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. That take this position that I'm in, I want you to be my Khalifa, if you will, and I want you to be in this position. And he said, take care of things, don't let things get out of order, make sure that things are right. Now, Harun alayhi salam, of course, did the best he could, but what ends up happening is that once these 30 days had passed, first and foremost, being without Musa alayhi salam in and of itself was a challenge for Banu Israel. They were not used to being without him. And not having him around and having Harun alayhi salam around instead, it was very, very, very foreign to them. And Musa alayhi salam, as I mentioned, he had a certain way about him, right? He had a certain everyman appeal. And so for him with Banu Israel, at the very least, they would look to him when they felt like something was amiss or they felt like they needed to take care of things. Now, in this situation, they were trying to figure out, well, okay, Musa's not here to guide us, so who are we supposed to turn to? Where do we look at this point in time? And the answer for them came in the form of a man named As-Samiri. And As-Samiri had been, according to some scholars, he actually had been raised by Jibreel alayhi salam. And Samiri comes, and his motivations are never made very clear. But he comes and he essentially tells the people that, listen, I want you to give me your gold. I'm going to fashion a god for you to worship, and this will be your god. Look, Musa's gone. Musa alayhi salam isn't here anymore. So, send me your gold. And some of the scholars mention that what ends up happening is he makes a pit in the ground and he puts all the gold, smelts it, basically melts the gold down, and then he shapes it into the shape of a calf. And in this calf, it had some air cavities such that when wind would pass through it, would make a noise as if it was mooing or lowing, if you will. And for the people of Banu Israel, this seemed like something that was very magical. Now, Samedi had also made a show of when he was doing it, acting as if he was sprinkling magic or what have you onto it, that, he was bringing about the God, if you will. Na'udhu billah. And so when Musa alayhi salam returns after this extra 10 nights have been added, and Musa alayhi salam had been having his own interesting situation. He'd been having his own, what's it called? Really, the best way to describe it is he'd been having his own adventures in some ways. And particularly what we see happen with Musa alayhi salam is that when he stands in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not physically, but standing on Mount Sinai, speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what happens. وَلَمَّا جَاءَ مُوسَى لِمِيقَاتِنَا وَكَلَّمَهُ رَبُّهُ قَالَ, that he goes to this miqat, this meeting place, and he starts to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, قَالَ رَبِّ أَرِنِي أَنظُرْ إِلَيْكَ, Ya Allah, let me see you. Ya Allah, let me see you. Let me be able to see you and be able to experience your glory. قَالَ لَن تَرَانِي, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you'll never be able to see me. وَلَكِنْ انظُرْ إِلَى الْجَبْلِ فَإِنِ اسْتَقَرَّ مَكَانَهُ فَسَوْفَ تَرَانِي. That then if you, because of this, you just look at that mountain over there, and if the mountain stays in its place, then it will be, you'll be able to see me. As soon as Musa alayhi salam, turns to look at the mountain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ لِلْجَبَلِ جَعَلَهُ دَكًّا. Now Musa alayhi salam, as soon as he turns to look at this mountain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals himself to this mountain, and just a small part of his glory, and this mountain is leveled, meaning it's completely obliterated. And Musa alayhi salam himself, in that moment, he falls down in unconsciousness. He falls down unconscious. And when he wakes up, his first words are, قَالَ سُبْحَانَكَ تُبْتُ إِلَيْكَ وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Ya Allah, I ask for your forgiveness, and I believe. I'm the first person to believe. So he had been having his own interesting experience in that time frame when the people of Banu Israel decided to take this calf. And his faith was only affirmed, while the faith of Banu Israel seemed to be lowering in that moment. When he returns, Musa alayhi salam is so angry. He is so upset. And this is this idea of Musa alayhi salam being that everyman type of individual, that he literally takes the stone tablets that he's been given, as some say the 10 Commandments. He takes these and he throws them. And he grabs his brother Harun alayhi salam by his hair and his beard, and he's dragging him, saying, what did you do? I left you in charge of the people. What did you do? And you can imagine how he must have felt in this moment, that he left his brother in charge of his people. He comes back and he sees his people dancing around this idol, worshiping this idol. And these are people who had literally just lived through the torture and the torment of Fir'aun. And so to see this sight must have been heartbreaking for him. And Musa alayhi salam grabs his brother. That's the first thing he can do. He grabs his brother. He says, what did you do? I left you in charge. And so Musa alayhi salam then, he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. He turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he asks him for forgiveness for himself, for his brother, and he says, admit us into your mercy. Anta arhamar rahimin. Forgive us, Ya Allah. And you can imagine now again that Musa alayhi salam has now walked into a situation after being away from his people who he is in charge of, and found them to be worshiping idols. How was it that he was going to deal with this situation? How is it that he was supposed to handle this? Because again, remember, these people had just been saved from Fir'aun. It wasn't that long ago. And yet here they are suddenly worshiping this calf. So what is it that he could have done? What is it that he could have changed? And the answer is very simply nothing. Even in that moment, when he grabs his brother Harun alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمَّا رَجَعَ مُوسَى إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ غَضْبَانَ أَسِفًا. He was so angry and aggrieved. قَالَ بِئْسَ مَا خَلَفْتُمُونِي مِن بَعْدِي. To his brother, he says that how awful is the job that you did. You did an awful job with this. أَعْجِلْتُمْ أَمْرَ رَبِّكُمْ. He says that, were you impatient in the matter of your Lord? To the people that I was only gone for 10 extra days. What were you thinking that in 10 days you couldn't handle handle this. You couldn't handle the fact that I was gone. وَأَلْقَى الْأَلْوَاحَ وَأَخَذَ بِرَأْسِ أَخِيهِ يَجُرُّهُ إِلَيْهِ. He grabs his brother and he's dragging him towards him. And Harun alayhi salam says that I was overcome. They were going to kill me if I just tried to fight them. He said, what did you want me to do? Then nobody would be there to guide them. Who knows where they would even be if I hadn't stuck around to try and at least push the conversation the right way. And this isn't to say all of the people of Musa alayhi salam disbelieved or believed in the calf, but some did, many did. So Musa alayhi salam, in this moment, when the entire situation is clear in front of him, when all the things that he has been dealing with are just hitting him, the fact that he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what he did, and then he fainted because he couldn't handle it, and he's standing there now watching his people trying to worship this idol. And in that moment, what are his first words after his anger subsides? قَالَ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي وَلِأَخِي وَأَدْخِلْنَا فِي رَحْمَتِكَ وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. He says, Ya Allah, please, Ya Allah, forgive me, forgive my brother, and enter us into your mercy, Ya Allah. You are the most merciful of all those who are merciful. You see, Musa alayhi salam's adversity is twofold, because number one, it's adversity in terms of his job as a prophet. And number two, it's in terms of his people. These are his people, and they have turned away so badly that the punishment for them was extremely harsh. And you can imagine that as the one who's in charge, the one who's responsible for his own people, he's feeling so aggrieved. He's feeling so upset at this moment. And he's also then feeling the fact that these people are making him look bad, if you will. Now, that's not to say that he's thinking of it in that way. Prophets, alayhim salam, are not individuals who think in such a manner, but recognize that this is his job to guide his people, and suddenly they're just doing this idol worship out of nowhere. So Musa alayhi salam's first turn is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that moment. And he asks for forgiveness. And Musa alayhi salam, وَلَمَّا سَكَتَ عَنْ مُوسَى الْغَضَبُ أَخَذَ الْأَلْوَاحِ. He turns back. Now this anger subsided. He's made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And where does he go now? To the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which was in the nuskha that he had, or rather the tablets that he was given. And so Musa alayhi salam in both ways turns back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this moment of adversity. This is what we really have to take from this story, brothers and sisters, is that Musa alayhi salam's story is constantly filled with difficulties and troubles and problems and issues, especially when it relates to his people. Part one, because of the fact that they're his people. That's just like, imagine your family was just acting in a manner that completely threw you off. It wasn't acceptable, and you knew it wasn't acceptable. They knew it wasn't acceptable, and your family was acting in such a way. You would feel a certain way. Our convert brothers and sisters can absolutely identify with this, because imagine how they feel when they see their brothers and sisters or their mothers and their fathers still sticking to a religion that they now know is not the right way, right? So think about that. That's how somebody would feel in a situation like this. But in these moments when he feels so angry and so aggrieved, even in those moments, he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asks him for forgiveness. He looks to his guidance, akhad al-alwah. He seeks out these tablets in order to learn what it is that he must do. What are his actions to be moving forward? And that's the lesson, brothers and sisters, for this today, inshallah, is just another reminder that in moments of adversity, we have to turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is not going to be some magic bullet. There's not going to be some end-all, be-all that we suddenly have in front of us when we're facing difficulties. The reality is that it's a slow process to get to that next level after adversity. It is a slow process. It takes time. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself does promise us, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. With difficulty, there is absolutely ease. And so this is for us to remember, brothers and sisters, that ease comes with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It comes with remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, staying close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In these moments of trials and tribulations and difficulties, brothers and sisters, ista'inu billahi wasbiru. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for assistance and be patient. And I know that's very easy to say, but at the end of the day, if we rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we remember that whatever happens to us is only happening by His decree. Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakeel. We rely on Allah, and He is the best of those who take care of people's affairs. He's the one who controls all affairs. A reminder for us, brothers and sisters, to keep all of this in mind. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for all of our shortcomings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide all of our hearts. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help those who are suffering across the world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us a cure for this disease. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cure all those who are ill. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabina wa Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.